Lisa Shield.
And I'm Benjamin Shield.
And we're the Shields. This is Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. Thank you so much for joining us. We know how valuable your time is, so we really appreciate you tuning in. Today, we're going to talk about the two different kinds of exclusive relationships, something that I may not have heard anyone really define before, especially in the way that we're going to talk about it. And I think it's incredibly important for people to be aware of this, because the one thing we don't have is time to waste. Time is our most precious commodity. In fact, when somebody pays you for your time, when you work for someone, they're paying for that beautiful piece of your life that you'll never get back again. They're actually compensating you for your time. And if we think about all of the time we have wasted in dating, in the wrong relationships, going through the motions, and not really getting where we want to go, to that guardian of our soul relationship, this is the most important thing of all. And I'm really excited because Benjamin is the one who saw this in our program. We teach actually a 12-week program called Emotionally Naked Dating. And then we also have a year-long mastermind program where women work with Benjamin and me exclusively for an entire year. And Benjamin started to notice that there are actually two kinds of exclusive relationships, and you really need to be aware of what you're getting yourself into. And if the relationship you're in, even if it is exclusive and you've had the exclusivity talk, you absolutely must be clear, not just put the covers over your head and think, oh, well, he's showing up and we're getting along and he wants to see me and everything seems to be going well. You can't let that exclusive relationship title lull you into a false sense of security and find yourself wasting months or even years of your life with the wrong guy. So, babe, what are the two different kinds of exclusive relationships?
Well, we define them as monogamous dating and progressive dating. And monogamous dating is where two people agree to only date each other, but it's not progressing towards a relationship. And so it's kind of the same old, same old. Progressive dating is where two people agree to be exclusive and are taking steps to share their lives together. Mm-hmm. I visualize it as monogamous dating would be going from date to date to date with each other, but it's like two separate lives, two parallel lines that aren't converging. Where progressive dating is where people begin to share more intimacy, more integration into each other's lives, and instead of two parallel lines, they're two lines that are converging.
Right. It's a beautiful image, babe. It's a beautiful image. And let's talk about this. As I just want to say that as you were saying that, I can think of several of my clients who have been in relationships like that. In fact, I had one client, her boyfriend worked for his family and she dated him for quite a while and really felt like, oh, this is going great. And we see each other, we spend time together and all. But it was really going nowhere. And she couldn't see that. She couldn't see it. So let's talk about, what does monogamous dating look like?
Well, first, it's exclusive. Neither one is seeing other people. The two people date each other. They may see each other a couple times a week, but it's usually a scheduled night, like a Tuesday and a Saturday, or something that is fairly regular. And it's usually at the convenience of one of the two people.
And can I interject something,
Sure.
babe? It can often seem reasonable, right? That this person only has Thursday night or can only do Thursday and Saturday. It can often, seem like, oh, well, he's got all these other responsibilities and he's got all these other things. One of the things that was astounding to me was that I knew how busy you were, but I was astounded at how you chose to make time for me. So it wasn't like we were restricted to this rigid schedule. You were finding time and making time for me. But in these monogamous dating relationships, I watch people just sort of getting on a schedule and making excuses for why that isn't changing or growing.
And both people feel comfortable because they're in a perceived relationship.
Yes.
And so they settle. They settle for something that is less than what they're looking for. At least one of the two people, it's less than what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So it's easy to settle into a routine and have it not go anywhere. It's not deepening. It's not getting more intimate or vulnerable. And they're not talking or planning for the future other than maybe a road trip. They're really not integrating into each other's lives where it involves a vision of the future together, what that's going to look like, how it's going to change from what it is today to how it can be tomorrow. So for this monogamous dating, this one that settles into a routine, one person wants more and the other person just wants convenience. So it's usually one of the two people really want to be in a relationship that's growing, deepening, becoming more intimate, more vulnerable, integrating into each other's lives, friends, families, working together, whatever it may be. And the other person is getting what they need. In some ways, it can kind of settle into friends with benefits. Yeah. The person who wants more, but they're afraid to ask because they don't want to hear the truth. They're afraid that if they ask for more, it may blow the relationship out of the water. So they go along in the relationship and they become increasingly anxious because they keep looking for, I think he's willing to do more. And unfortunately, the anxiety of this one person who wants more may push the person who just wants convenience away. And then as that person begins to withdraw, the other person becomes more anxious and it becomes a downward cycle.
Right. And so then they get into anxious avoidant dynamic where one person feels like this is fine. I thought everything was okay. And the other person has been suppressing all these feelings. And then they start bubbling up and you start getting into this anxious avoidant dynamic, which can become really, really, really destructive. One of the big problems is those relationships can go on for a long time. And precisely because they have spent so much time together, there's so much invested in the relationship, not emotionally, because they never really got to that level of emotional closeness, but time-wise, there's been shared experiences and time and dates and all. And the person who's anxious is really feeling like, well, we've invested months or years of our lives into this relationship. Why wouldn't we want to take it to the next level?
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, that we talked about is that it can also settle into a friends with benefits relationship.
Yeah. Which is convenient for one person, but more often than not, the other person wants so much more than that.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that in the anxious avoidant dynamic, the avoidant person keeps going back because once the anxious person capitulates, which is what happens, the anxious person again feels there's so much potential and he's going to come around. And I know that he really has deeper feelings for me and all. And so once the anxious person capitulates, the avoidant thinks that the anxious partner has come back because they've accepted the terms of the relationship. And so then it starts up again until the cycle plays out another time and another time and another time. And these relationships I've seen, I can think of another client who went on for well over a year in a relationship with a man. And I think in the back of her mind, she knew that something was off because there were some extenuating circumstances. They lived in different cities. And so because of that, they would see each other relatively, they could only do on weekends and so forth. But the problem was that she still could sense that there was an underlying lack of desire or commitment on his part to want to figure out a way to deal with the distance and to bring their lives closer and to talk about that. And here's the thing, something like distance can seem like a very viable excuse, but in the end, for two people to bring their lives together, they are going to have to find a way to work with that. And there has to be a willingness on both sides to work together to figure that out. And then what happened was she had something catastrophic happen in her life, and he just wasn't there for her emotionally. And he really said, I can't do this. I can't be there, after she had spent a year or a year and a half in this relationship, you know, accommodating the distance and everything. So that was monogamous dating. And you have to be very, very, very careful when you're in a situation like that. There has to be forward movement. So to give a converse scenario to that, Mike.
Well, just adding to that, if I may for a moment, often people mistake the time invested with deepening emotional vulnerability and integration into each other's lives. So just building on something that you said, that they've invested so much time, they think that there's got to be something there because they have shared experiences, but the shared experiences are activities.
Yeah. I was writing over the weekend, and I shared with you that when I was thinking about my marriage, and I was with my ex-husband for a total of 13 years, we were never partners. Did we have fun together? Sure. Did we get married? Yeah, we did. But we never partnered. We never were partners. We were never working towards similar goals and dreams and, you know, sitting down and talking about our financial future, where we were headed in life, the things we wanted from life. We never did any of that.
In fact, the conversations that you did have about finances were repetitive. So often with monogamous dating, that the conversations that seem deep are just ones that occur again and again and again without any change, without any resolution.
Well, and what I think one of the things that we were talking about earlier before we started the podcast was that one of the biggest issues in relationship is that it can feel like there's all this passion and emotion and intensity, but it's not connected. It's like one person is begging the other person for connection, for a connection that isn't happening. And it feels intense, it feels emotional, it feels like connection, but it's really disconnection. And I just have that stark image in my mind of those two parallel lines that are never actually coming together. And you don't have two people who are really progressing. One person in a monogamous dating situation is just getting his or her needs met. They're going on dates. That person is feeling like, oh, I have somebody to have sex with. I have somebody to go have dinner with on Saturday night.
A plus one.
Yeah, I kind of got a plus one. If I have a party or an event or whatever, Susan is great to hang out with. She's, pleasant, and she doesn't put any pressure on me, and I don't have to commit. I don't have to risk anything here. And so this is just perfect for me. She's nice. She's pretty. She's easy to, we laugh, we have fun, but there's no risk. There's no real commitment or real plans for a future and integrating their lives together. Whereas Susan's going along in that relationship, hoping, for something deeper or for those lines to start to join, and they never do.
Yeah. And just before the podcast, we kind of invented a couple
based on
Yeah.
an amalgam of different couples. Yeah, yeah.
And so let's call them Sandy and Rick. And, they see each other the same 2 days a week. It could be Mondays and Saturdays or whatever it is, but there's a regularity, that is just fixed in their seeing each other. They adore each other's company.
Well, and Sandy may have even asked Rick, do you think we could see each other one more day during the week? And Rick probably, would have said, I'd really like to, but I've got my kids, I've got work, and I need some downtime and whatever.
Yeah. And they adore each other's company. They love when they're together. But the personal parts of their lives are more hidden than shared. It's compartmentalized. So they really haven't integrated their friends, each other with their friends, their coworkers, activities that they really love doing.
Or one of them may have, like Sandy had Rick over, and Rick met her sister, right? Came to her apartment and met her sister, but Rick has made no effort to introduce Sandy to any of his family members, any of his colleagues, even events, family events. There's always an excuse for why it's not the right time or how it's too soon or whatever. And Sandy feels left out, and she feels like something's wrong, but she can't quite put her finger on it, because at the same time, they're going on lovely dinners. He takes her to nice places. They even went away for a beautiful weekend up to Napa, to go wine tasting.
Gifts.
Yeah, he brings her thoughtful gifts. But Sandy, they're not talking about, because there's a holding back in a way. There's a holding back and a fear of not. Sandy's worried so much about, she's got some very, very big things going on in her personal life. She has a child who has a lot of problems because of her divorce, and she has a lot of difficulty with her ex, but she's not sharing any of that with Rick because she's so concerned things are going well enough, and she wants it to progress. And she's afraid if she brings any of that to Rick,
it'll blow it up out of the water.
It'll blow it up out of the water. And so she does compartmentalize those parts of her life, because she also hasn't had a green light from Rick that it's okay for her to share those kinds of things with him. And so it's kind of just remaining on the surface, and there's something inside of her that she feels isn't quite being satisfied, but she still keeps feeling like he wants to see me. He paid for this beautiful weekend in Napa. He follows through with those regular dates. And so she's really confused and torn.
They adore each other, and they're still parallel, not converging lines.
Yeah. And so, the consequences of a relationship like that is that she's going to go on along in this, specifically because she is having problems with her ex and her kid, and he's giving her some relief that she needs in her life that is missing. It gives her some something to look forward to. It gives her something to hope for. And
also a definition that she has a man in her life.
Yeah.
Checking that off the to-do list.
Yeah. But deep inside, it's unsatisfying, and she knows it. Yeah. And the problem with the consequences of this is that it can go on for, as I said, months or years.
And it almost never changes.
Right.
So it's the same old, same old, same old, pleasant. They adore each other, and it never changes, and it's never satisfying. And I think one of the tragedies is that it can waste years of their lives in a relationship. And it would be particularly tragic if the woman was of childbearing age,
Right.
wanted children, and has wasted this time with someone who has no concept of a future of a merging future together other than what it is and what it continues to be, this monogamous dating of the same old, same old.
Well, and also, if I can add to that, with a man who will give seemingly good answers for why now is not the time, right now isn't the time to talk about kids. Yes, I want kids, or in some undetermined future, but he will give all kind, when I get this, this promotion, or, a few months from now, let's talk about it. But it's always like somewhere off in the future, and it's never something that he wants to talk about or plan for now.
Yeah. 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 And the tragedy also being in this monogamous dating, this same old, same old, same old, it keeps the anxious person, the person who wants more in the relationship, from finding what we call the guardian of her soul. Someone who really sees them together, is a guardian and a nurturer of her soul and the soul's growth. So the monogamous dating isn't so much about supporting each other's growth, but being there for each other in the present moment at that superficial level. She gets stuck in this B-level relationship, hoping for something she'll never get.
Yeah, and they never will integrate into each other's lives. It's not those lines aren't going to come together. My image is kind of this feeling of somebody kind of always holding you, with their hand out, holding
Right.
you, that you can only come so close. Yeah. Whereas somebody who would be open, it would be like there's just come closer. And again, I really want to emphasize, because of the passion, once they get into that anxious avoidant dynamic, if it keeps going on, because of the passion and the intensity of a relationship like this, they think that there is a connection when there really isn't one. When what's really happening is that the passion and the intensity they're feeling is really fear and desperation. And because there's no connection and the avoidant just withdraws more and more, the anxious person is just there pleading for something that he can never give.
Yeah.
But it feels like a connection because there's so much emotional intensity.
Yeah.
But it's not.
And time invested.
But what it really is, all that passion and intensity is really just fear and desperation.
Yeah.
And disconnection.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what it looks like to be in a progressive relationship where you have, where you have a committed, an exclusive relationship where two people are progressing and both people are wanting a connection in a relationship.
Yeah, they're thinking about the future, thinking about integrating each other into each other's lives, and in every aspect of their lives.
And they're getting emotionally naked with one another. They're saying, I love you. That's another one,
Yeah.
That's a big one in a disconnected,
Yeah, one of the two people, often the guy, is, that the woman is waiting for him to say, I love you.
Yeah.
And she knows that he loves her, but he can't say the words.
Or she thinks he loves her, but maybe he really isn't saying the words because he's really not in love with her. And she keeps telling herself, oh, but he's doing all these wonderful things for me. He keeps showing up. We spend time together. We have great sex. He must love me, and he's just not saying it. But maybe he's not saying it because he's not in love.
Well, let's look at what a progressive relationship can look like.
So Deborah and Mark, let's talk about our couple, Deborah and Mark, who is these are based on conglomerate, like amalgams of real clients, but.
And many over the years, they find themselves growing emotionally closer with time. And they want to reveal more and more about their personal life so that their partner can know them.
Yeah, and they naturally want to spend more time together and make time for each other no matter how busy they are. So we have one couple where they really do live about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour apart from each other in a big metropolitan area. And they are so sweet together that they actually spend an hour or more a night on Zoom together. Every single night, and they play guitar and they talk and they read poetry and they read books together, but they actually carve out that time. And both of these people, are extremely high level, busy professional people.
And it's not just time, they're
connecting.
They're creating a deeper sense of intimacy, vulnerability, what we call emotional nakedness.
It's the sweetest thing in the world, but they feel like a priority in each other's lives. They constantly do things to show one another that they are a priority.
And they're constantly doing thoughtful things and show that they're looking out for each other and want to take care of each other. Like, for example, this was so sweet. We're recording this on Father's Day, and she had bought his son a gift so that the son can give the gift to the father on Father's Day.
Like a card, she bought bought him a card, and then bought a gift for the son to give to his father. The son is 12 years old. It was like, what an incredibly sweet thing to do. And it's not like how long have they been together, babe? 8 months now? And just the idea that she would do that. This isn't her kid. The little boy has a mother, but if the nuclear family had been together, the mother probably would have bought something for the son to give. But she did that, which I just think is like beyond sweet, beyond sweet. So they look out for each other. They take care of each other. Our client's partner wants her to have a top-notch medical doctor, primary care physician. And so he was actually searching and looking for primary care physicians for her. Just a million little things, thoughtful things.
I think my first gift to you that you remember me giving to you wasn't a big thing, financially at all, but what
you gave me a AAA card. And it was so cute. You said, I think you probably have one of these already, but I get the premium, I'm getting the premium one. And there's a place, to give one to another person. And so I just put you there, just in case. And I was just like, oh my God, nobody's ever done something like that for me. I mean, it was just the most wonderful, thoughtful thing. And I saw the love. I saw how you were taking care of me.
Just like I'm going to pat your hair down.
Ah!
There you go. Perfect.
And that was early in our relationship. That was fairly early within the first few months. So Mark and Deborah can't do enough for each other. They just can't. They find so many big and little ways to show that they're thinking about each other, right? And their conversations feel open and emotionally naked. And it's not just a thing like, oh, we can tell each other anything. They really can talk about anything without getting defensive because they know they have each other's best interest at heart. And even when there are issues or things come up, they're so caring and concerned about one another. I remember our client was a little upset with, Deborah was a little upset with Mark, and he bought her tickets to a concert to cheer her up because he knew that something was wrong. And she was so touched that he recognized that she wasn't happy and that he went out of his way to do something really sweet for her. And because there is a genuine excitement about becoming closer and spending more time together, they make conscious choices to integrate their daily lives. It's not like they're relegated to, Monday and Saturday. They make conscious choices, and they find time to be together because that's where they want to be. They want to spend time together, and the more time they spend together, the more time they want to spend together.
Yeah, and it's not this constant push-pull where the person that wants more moves forward tentatively. The person who's satisfied with what is feels a little threatened that she wants more than what he's willing to give. And it's kind of a push-pull, as opposed to constantly coming closer together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, of course, there's nothing nothing is just 100% perfect, but those are the things you want to look for in a relationship. You want to see that you're taking a step towards him and he's taking a step towards you, not that you're taking a step towards him and then he takes a step, backwards. So there's this feeling of the two of you wanting to come together, wanting to spend more time together, talking about a future together, building towards a life together, and also much more self-disclosure. Talking about, I remember on our fifth date, you shared some very personal things with me intentionally because you wanted me to know these things. You saw the relationship progressing and you knew that you were falling for me. Mm-hmm. And you wanted to make sure, both I think for yourself, so that you didn't get your own heart broken, and also for me, if there would be anything that might be a deal breaker, you wanted to share everything so that I knew what I was getting into and I could make a choice at that point before we went any further, because you really were wanting, and that showed me. You were demonstrating by sharing these incredibly vulnerable things with me, about yourself, that you were letting me know that you wanted to have a relationship with me, or you wouldn't have opened up in that way. Yeah. So you want self-disclosure, you want sharing, and you want to do that consciously. You want to see a man doing these things consciously and bringing each other in, bringing your lives together. So what is the solution? What should people be looking out for here, honey?
Well, first, I think it's important to be upfront at the beginning about what you want. When I write the dating profiles for the women in your group, if someone wants marriage, that's in the first line. I'm seeking my future husband, lover, playmate, best friend, but it's right there, rather than saying, well, maybe that'll scare off some good people. Well, there's some good people that may not want marriage. And so it's important that you're both on the same page right at the beginning, that even, if you don't know if you're going to be together, if it's going to be happily ever after, in a long-term relationship, but at least in the very beginning, you know that you're on the same page, that you're looking for the same thing.
Well, and that the word marriage or the word children isn't gonna send him running for the hills, because if it does, or if a man really does have a fear of marriage or a fear of having a family and children, it's better to turn those men off quickly rather than spend time in this sort of monogamous dating situation, hoping that he's going to come around. And most mature adult men know, just because you have put, I'm looking for marriage and, and a family or children, that there's a process of getting to know each other and seeing if you're a good fit for each other. But a mature adult man shouldn't be afraid to hear those words either. Most men know that these are things that most women are looking for. So you don't want to keep going in any relationship without finding out if you're both on the same page and want the same things, right?
Yeah. And once you've agreed to be exclusive, which may be after, let's just say, between 6 and 12 weeks, just arbitrarily, 6 and 12 weeks of dating, you need to start to talk about what your future will look like and not be afraid to talk about that. So, it's one thing to say we're exclusive, we're taking our profiles down, we're not seeing other people. And it's something else to say, I'm taking my profile down because I've never met anyone like you. And if the other person feels the same way, that it should begin to talk about, wouldn't it be nice if we could live closer together? Wouldn't it be nice if one day we could share a house together, buy a house together? Wouldn't it be nice if you want children, I want children, that we could share that in our lives?
And then see his response or reaction to those things. Does he say, yes, that would be lovely, or I look forward to that too? Does he pull back, look at his body language, watch his responses when those subjects come up? Also, I will tell you, there's lots and lots of guys who want those things and will bring them up to you. I mean, I did nothing except show up and make it safe and give Benjamin a green light. But Benjamin pursued me. In fact, he even brought up the conversation around sex and how he wanted to progress into the relationship. He said, I'm not rushing into anything, including sex. And I've tried this before. It hasn't worked. And he said, I really like you and I really want to get to know you, but I don't want to rush. And that was amazing to hear him set the tone and take the initiative. But there are men who do this. Don't think that there aren't. Just because you haven't met that man yet, it doesn't mean he's not out there looking for you. The other thing you have to do is periodically test the waters and make sure you're still on the same page. So even if he tells you at the beginning, oh, sure, I'm interested in getting married and I would love to have kids and whatever, you cannot go along and just assume that because you've talked about those things that he isn't dating you monogamously, because he may feel that you're not the one for him, but he may be getting his needs met for now in that relationship, and he could just be going along. Maybe he himself doesn't even realize what he's doing until you ask some of these harder questions And then it gives him pause, and he thinks, oh, well, I like her and this has been fun, but I don't like her enough to want to spend the rest of my life with her. But that may not have even been that may not have been in his awareness until that question actually came up. So sometimes it's important to bring these things up, bring this stuff to light, and have these conversations, because think about how many of us just go along in something because it seems good. It seems like it's going great. And then we don't ask these harder questions. And then suddenly it's like, oh, well, I don't know if this is what I really want. So you got to periodically test the waters.
Yeah. So you have to see real forward movement. And the two of you actually, of the two of you actually bringing your lives together, and watch to see if your partner keeps promising things, and if he's not delivering, like introducing you to his kids, his colleagues, his friends, family, moving in together, get engaged. If you feel that this isn't happening, this real forward movement, and particularly if the other person is making promises to do this and they're not keeping the promises, particularly after, say, 4 or 6 months, end it. Just end it and don't look back, because it's not going to get any better.
No, and what's going to happen is you're going to start to build that anxious avoidant relationship where you think that you can convince him or get him to give you what you want, when what you want is a partner who just wants to meet you in the middle, who wants to have a relationship with you, who's like Deborah and Mark and is coming towards you, wanting to build a future, carving out time to be with you because he can't get enough of you and you can't get enough of him. And you'll sit on Zoom for an hour every night just because you're so crazy about each other and you live 45 minutes away and you can't see each other every night. And by the way, it was Mark, not Deborah, who asked for those Zoom calls, who wanted to spend every night on Zoom with her, who wanted more and more and more time with her, and not because he was needy. If she was tired, if he saw in her eyes that she had a hard day, he'd say, "It's okay. I want you to go to sleep. Go take care of yourself. We'll do this tomorrow." And he could see that she was tired, and he would pick up on that and tell her to go to bed. It wasn't like he was desperate, but he definitely wanted time with her and connection, and to deepen that connection. And he wasn't going to relegate her to 2 days a week because that's all he could fit in, or that's all that worked for him. He wanted that relationship. In fact, 8 months later, she's quitting her job where she is. She's given notice. She got a fabulous new job right near where he lives. And they're going to be moving in together in just a few months.
Yeah. So I think the difference is the difference between compartmentalizing the relationship, where, okay, I have my life, and on Tuesdays and Saturdays or whatever it is, I see this person.
Like Sandy and Rick.
Yes.
Yep.
As opposed to, how can we continue to integrate? How can we move closer?
Yeah.
What do we see in the future? And all the kindness, progressive kindness that people can show each other.
And not just endless unfulfilled promises that are never followed through on, but one step forward after another, two people caring about each other and wanting to get closer, rather, those two lines converging rather than just two parallel lines. Or as I had said, that feeling that somebody is always keeping you at arm's length rather than welcoming you into their heart. So you really want to pay attention to these signs. If after 4 or 6 months of dating, you don't really feel like this relationship is progressing, you're not making more time for each other, and it may seem on the surface that there are reasonable reasons why it's not progressing, I'm going to tell you that two people who want to be together, they find a way to be together. Benjamin was incredibly busy. He had a full life. He had a full schedule when we met, as did I, but we found a way. We also lived 45 minutes apart and probably over an hour in Los Angeles traffic. It was a great distance. And one day Benjamin just looked at me and he said, go find a house for us. And I did. We moved in together, and 20 years later, which we can't even imagine, we were sitting on the sofa last night and we looked at each other.
Where does it go?
Yeah, we just were like, Benjamin looked at me and he said, do you realize we've spent 20 years together? 20 years, and it feels like yesterday. It's been amazing. Well, this has been Getting Inside the Right Male Mind, and we can't thank you enough for joining us. Please tell everyone you know, your brothers and sisters and daughters and sons and aunts and uncles. Tell your mom and dad. Tell your boyfriend or your husband. Oh my gosh, we hear about our friends listening to our podcast with their boyfriends and husbands, which really is such a kick. So thank you all for that. Please tell everyone that you know about this podcast. We want to get the word out to as many people as possible. And if you know any women who are struggling in this part of their lives to find a true guardian of their souls, please tell them to go to lisashield.com and click the link to watch my free 45-minute session. At the end of that session, there is an offer to come on a free call with me or a member of my team, and we will show her exactly how we can help her find a guardian of her soul now, not 5 or 10 years from now, but now. She doesn't have to keep struggling and trying to figure this out on her own. We can give her a proven roadmap that has worked for hundreds of our clients to get this solved. Also, go to YouTube, give us a thumbs up, rate and like this podcast. And finally, please, we are going to be doing some episodes where we just sit back, and our podcast manager, Carrie Lee, a producer, is going to come on, and Carrie Lee is going to have a list of those questions that she is going to ask Benjamin and me. So send those questions to podcast@lisashield.com. At the end of this month, we are going to also be debuting our brand new website. So please, please, please check it out. It's been well over a year in the making. We are so proud of it. It's like giving birth. It's taken longer than a child. Oh my goodness. But please check it out, because it really is. I've dreamed of having an extraordinary website, and I feel that we knocked it out of the park. I'm Lisa Shield.
And I'm Benjamin Shield.
And thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.